Welcome to Suthichai Live English. What is going to happen to Thai politics when Kun Thaksin Shinawatra, former Prime Minister, who is now on parole, enters officially into the arena again? Tomorrow he is scheduled to be at the Pheu Thai Party's headquarters. And according to story being bandied about, he will meet the Pheu Thai MPs. And of course, there's no official agenda. But Tuesday, March 26, is the day of the weekly meeting of the Pheu Thai MPs, where his daughter, Kun Paetongtarn Shinawatra, will be sitting at the head of the table. So what is Kun Thaksin going to do there? That remains a mystery, but it's going to make news. Most reporters will be there. And my speculation is that he might be tempted to answer questions from the reporters. What will happen if Kun Thaksin makes it official that he is back in politics officially? I invite Ajahn Thitinan Phongsuthirath to give us his analysis. Ajahn Thitinan is professor for International Relations at the Faculty of Political Science, Chulalongkorn University. He is also director of the Institute for Science and International Security, ISIS, Faculty of Political Science at Chula as well. Welcome, Ajahn Thitinan ครับ
สวัสดีครับสุริชัยครับ
สวัสดีครับ Your article in the Bangkok Post, the latest column, talks about Kun Thaksin and Pitha. You started the column by saying Thai politics in the near term will likely be dominated by the fate of the two largest vote winners from the general election in May 2023. That is the Move Forward Party and Pheu Thai parties. MFP, Move Forward Party, is at risk of another dissolution, the same as its predecessor, Future Forward Party, suffered in 2020. Pheu Thai's political future appears to hinge on Thaksin Shinawatra and his return from exile in what you said is believed to be a deal that follows the assumption of the premiership under Kun Sethar Thavisin. And for Thaksin, a royal pardon and early release on parole. Tomorrow, Kun Thaksin will appear at Pheu Thai Party's headquarters. He was in Chiang Mai last week, and it was public. He was making it public that he's back in politics. So what do you describe as the Thaksin factor in Thai politics today, Ajahn Thitinan?
ครับคุณสุริชัย First, let me just make a small correction. I'm a professor at the Political Science Faculty at Chulalongkorn University, but I'm a senior fellow at the Institute of Security and International Study. ISIS, Thailand, based at the university. Look, I think Kun Suthichai, we go back a long way, and you were my big boss back in 1992, 1993 when I was a journalist for that year before I moved to Chula. So I think maybe we can start with the kind of going down memory lane a little bit, going down a memory lane. If you remember, the fixation with Kun Thaksin, Kun Suthichai, is a 2-decade phenomenon.
Yeah.
And I think that this fixation now, by the way, is outdated. I think that this fixation has been overtaken by events, and that if we're still stuck on it, we will end up seeing more signs of political decay and economic stagnation in Thailand. Thailand has been at a standstill over the last 2 decades. Standstill. It has not really progressed, and I think the fixation with Kun Thaksin is risking going down that road further. So just a very brief upshot. 20 years ago, Kun Suthichai, you, myself, and many others saw that the Thaksin administration had abuses of power, conflicts of interest, cronyism, collusion. I mean, this 2024 is a 2-decade anniversary of the Southern violence.
Yeah.
In the crusade, the Thakbai, the violations of human rights and extrajudicial killings. So, I mean, there's a long rap sheet on Kun Thaksin going back then. But at the same time, my own personal lesson is that the last 2 decades, I also see that, after you see so much going round and round, the Thaksin administration at that time had a plan for Thailand. It had corruption, it had conflicts of interest, but it also had a plan for Thailand. I mean, if you look at now, what they're trying to do with this, land bridge, soft power, FTAs, 10,000 baht populist giveaway. Back then, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, 20 years ago, there was the one thumb, one product, the 30 baht healthcare, and the cluster development projects, making Thailand a hub for food, fashion, tourism, automobiles, and healthcare. There were the 5 niche industries. Now we're seeing the same kind of language, the same kind of projection again 20 years later. Now, in between, Suthichai, as we know, back in 2005, 2006, in that era, you were harassed by the Thaksin administration, the AIS, the big company, reduced or eliminated or took away advertisements in the nation.
You remember all those stories, huh?
And they send the tax people after people they didn't like, the journalists they didn't like. Academics also suffered. There was one little episode in June 2003 when Suthichai, that Thaksin, as prime minister, he was very powerful at that time. He was criticizing even the taxi, and a taxi driver wanted to take me to the police station. I mean, he was so popular and so powerful. Now, there was one small episode when he criticized me as an academic who was useless, should be investigated and fired by the Chulalongkorn University. Anyway, that's a very brief, short trip down memory lane. But now things are different now. I mean, we fixated, and I followed the news.
Obsessed and fixated. Yes.
I think obsessed, but the obsession, I think, has been overtaken by events. I mean, if you look at the 1 year, Thai politics is a charade. What you see is not what really is going on, right? I mean, the Kun Thaksin came back on August 22nd, the same day that Suthichai became prime minister, and then he had, Kun Thaksin had all his, neck brace, and then all the medical conditions. It looked like he was, under close observation, and he couldn't go to jail because, he had all his medical limitations and ailments. But we can see that along the way, the price of going after Kun Thaksin has been so high for Thailand. Not that he didn't deserve it, but after a while, you have to ask different questions now. I ask different questions now. Is Thaksin was a problem back then for corruption and everything else. But after 20 years, Thaksin also had a plan for Thailand. How come his opponents and adversaries and enemies did not have a better plan for Thailand? How come they allowed him and his parties to keep winning elections and then dissolving those parties twice in 2007, 2008? And, when you dissolve political parties, don't forget, you ban the politicians, so you're getting rid of the political talent, but you disenfranchise people. Thai people have been systematically disenfranchised over the last 2 decades. 2007, 2008, Thai Rak Thai Palang Prachachon, right down the line, right up to Future Forward, and I put my 2020. And then now it looks imminent that Move Forward Gaoklai will be dissolved in the near term. So I think now some things are different now, Kun Suthichai. Move Forward is in the picture. Thaksin was a problem. And now I'm actually asking a different question. We know he's going to play, he's going to be in politics. I mean, we might as well stop asking. He's been in politics. Why don't we ask? How come there was a deal that allowed him to have his sentence reduced from 8 years to 1 year? How come? Because 8 years to 1 year is conspicuous. Yes. But we only talk about the 1 year. We talk about the 1 year, how he hasn't gone to jail. How come we don't talk about 7 years that were reduced from his sentence? Also, when Thaksin came back, he gave up his moral high ground. Remember all those years? He said, he was ousted by an illegitimate military coup
Yeah.
and judicial interventions.
Yeah.
These were politically motivated. But in
Mhm.
fact, he came back and received and accepted his convictions, his sentence. That means that high ground is gone. So obviously there was a deal, and it takes two to tango, Kun Suthichaiครับ. The Thaksin side, but there's also the other side that we haven't talked about. So I think this Thaksin banging, the banging on Thaksin, I think it's now a bit outdated. I'm actually interested to see what they can do. My first preference after order has gone by is to have an elected civilian government leading the way, having policy platform and able to implement its policies. Now, this should have been moved forward. The government of Thailand today should be moved forward with Pheu Thai. They won more than 2/3 of the vote. Let's not forget that. Let's not pretend. And there has been a systematic subversion, concoction, contrivance to get rid of, move forward, marginalize them, and likely dissolve them. So Pheu Thai has taken as a second best outcome. It's still civilian, still elected, still better than the 9 years under General Prayut, for sure. So I want to give them a chance, and let's see what they're going to do. I mean, Kun Thaksin now, I'm asking different questions. Back when he was in power, and it looked like he was taking Thailand places. Remember, Kun Suthichai, even though we disliked the administration of Thaksin at that time, 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005, abuse of power, autocratic. But he had those policies that, people outside Thailand thought Thailand was going to be the regional leader. Since then, now Thailand has been at its lowest point internationally. The last 10 years, Kun Suthichai, Thailand's economic growth, the trend growth, has come down to 1.5 per year over the last 10 years. We have racked up trillions of baht in debt under General Prayut. So, we're looking at economic stagnation. So if this government, civilian government, second best, can do something about that, I would like to see.
Can Thaksin regain or repeat the magic of 2 decades ago? Give him the power. If we believe that he could revive the country's economy, then okay, let's go ahead and forget about the past for a change. But do you think he can really repeat the magic? Now circumstances have changed, and that he's not as magical as before. And Kun Setha, if we believe he is just a proxy, cannot really carry it out if Thaksin really had a grand strategy for the country. We don't see that yet.
I think there are two answers to that. First, if you think of an iPhone, for example, iPhone 1 came out after the coup in 2006 that overthrew Thaksin. So there was no iPhone when Thaksin was in power.
Okay.
And then there was iPhone 5 when Yingluck was in power.
Right.
Today there's iPhone 15. Today, Thailand is sliding down the global value chain so that we are picking up the crumbs. We are picking up fruits off the ground, low-hanging fruits on the value chain. Cheap labor, tourism, hospitality, labor-driven. Thailand has a big deficit with trade deficit with China. Because
growing.
We're importing a lot of machineries and we're exporting cheap stuff. So now, basically, first answer is that today there's iPhone 15. What can the Thaksin team, what kind of iPhone model can they come up with? The challenge is iPhone 15 going to iPhone 16. This is where the world economy is. This is what Thailand's challenges are. And the last time they were empowered under Yingluck was iPhone 5. Wow. So in a way, let's see what kinds of ideas they've got. We've had a lot of innovation. Things on the ground have moved a lot. So I'm not sure if Kun Thaksin is still up to par. He liked to read. Back then, 20 years ago, he can give a 3-hour lecture on globalization, right? But now we have economic security. We have supply chain resilience and all of that. Is he up to the game? That's the first answer. Second answer, the powers that be that made this deal with him, that enable him to come back and reduce the sentence from 8 years to 1 year, which he did not really serve any of it in jail. Now, would they allow this party, Pheu Thai, and the Thaksin side team and the Suthichai-led government to make some forward movements for Thailand? Would they allow Thailand to go forward a little bit? We're talking about expanding the pie. if the pie expands, then we all can share more from it. But if the pie doesn't expand, if we have 1.5% growth, that's not a lot. That's very marginal. 1.5% growth going forward 5 years, 10 years, we're going to see some stagnation here. So I think it also depends on whether the people that allow this deal to take place, would they allow the Thaksin-led, Suthichai-led, Thaksin-backed government to try to move Thailand forward or not? So far, 7 months, they have not. There's been systematic obstruction and stymieing of the government, various policies. So we see not much progress. That's why we see visa-free tourism, very kind of low-hanging fruits.
You mean Thaksin and Suthichai don't have a free hand in handling the country's economy?
Well, if they have a free hand, they have policies. But you look at the main policy signatures, right? So the land bridge, the soft power, the free trade agreements. Free trade agreements in particular, I think could be a way forward for Thailand. We need structural reform. So when I hear structural reform, structural change of the Thai economy, that's when I think we're going to make some forward movement. But when I see, when we see this tourism, this kind of cheap labor driven, and we also have the risk of having a lot of cheap Myanmar labor from next door. This is a big trap for Thailand. If we don't get out of it, we're going to be stuck at the lower end of the value chain. Yeah, they have some free hand, but if you look around, what policy has they really got moving? 10,000 baht is being stymied, right? That policy I don't agree with in terms of the economics of it. The multiplier effects will not be that great. It'd be kind of piecemeal, and it was kind of a policy pledge before the election, kind of populist to get the votes, And remember this time too, Suthichai, the first time, Thai, the Thaksin party has lost the election. And I think the Thaksin magic has waned. It still can be palpable and considerable and can still help Thailand, but it's no longer what it used to be. When he went up to Chiang Mai, if you do this 15 years ago, there'd be a rock concert. There'd be like massive people. Yeah. There was a good turnout, but not massive. On the other hand, the massive turnout goes for Move Forward. So the Move Forward now is really the new game in town. I mean, they're being obstructed, they're being decimated, decapitated. But their agenda is what Thai people want: agenda of reform, of change, of structural reform, so that we can move forward.
Some people believe that one of the conditions of the so-called secret deal is for Thaksin to get rid of the Move Forward party first. Get rid of that nuisance. Get rid of that threat. Then we will allow you to have a free hand. So far, the condition has not been met. That means that, they cannot expect Thaksin's party to win in the next election. So, second best option is to dissolve it. And with that, after that, Thaksin might be able to, if he still has the magic, to deliver the goods. Do you see that as the scenario coming up, that, okay, Move Forward out of the way. Now Thaksin can deliver his magic once again? Or is it wishful thinking?
I think the powers that be, the election results were unexpected. I think that's fair to say. I think that most people, and the deal that we saw on August 22nd was a deal that was in the works before the election. But it turned out so diametrically opposed, so different. Nobody anticipated that Move Forward would edge out, would beat Thai 151 to 141. So that created a tricky situation for Thai and for the powers that be, the people that made this deal. So they had to do some additional contrivance, maneuvering. So they have to come up with a kind of a court cases against Move Forward, and eventually Move Forward was relegated to the opposition, and then another charge against them. I mean, the Constitutional Court charge decision that proposing the amendment of Lèse Majesté 112 is equivalent, tantamount to overthrowing the democratic system with monarchy as head of state, with the king as head of state. It's really a landmark decision, and that would make Move Forward liable for dissolution now, with the Election Commission filing the suit, the case. So Move Forward out now with the deal with this Pheu Thai. I think the hope would be that Pheu Thai can come in and maybe fill in that gap, make itself kind of popular again, and therefore undermine and reduce the base of Move Forward. And that may be something that the conservative establishment would be more comfortable with, but it's not happening. I mean, you look at the polls, but you also look at the momentum. Move Forward, agenda is still very strong, and they could be dissolved. They want to form another party. So it's not about the party, the name of the party, but about this. I think about the structural reform and the agenda. So Pheu Thai is on the back foot. I think that it's very tricky for Pheu Thai and Kun Thaksin. They want to regain ground. They're in government, they have power now, but do they have what it takes to win hearts and minds the way they did in 2001 and 2005 and 2007 and 2011? I think this time it's much more difficult, because I think many hearts and minds have already joined Move Forward.
Yes. But Thaksin had to pay a very high price for the deal. And the most, I think, serious setback, the price he paid was that he shifted from his liberal label to conservative overnight. Do you think that probably constitutes the most serious setback for him? And that may be the reason why he cannot regain his magic, because the brand already has been damaged. And I don't think Thaksin can regain the trust of his power base, his constituency, by saying, I'm sorry, I just had to do it for some quick win solution. Now I'm back as your hero. I am the liberal. I'm really the liberal guy. Please vote for me. Is that possible, that scenario?
The irony, one irony of Thai politics is that Kun Thaksin may not have been all that liberal to begin with. I mean, I think that back 20 years ago, 25 years ago, he was always kind of an establishment. I mean, through and through, his upbringing, his police career. I don't think that he was really an anti-establishment leader. I mean, it so happened that his policy platform challenged establishment interest because he became so popular. I mean, looking back, I think that what he wanted to be, I think he was very popular, but I don't think he wanted to see himself. He didn't see himself as a kind of someone who wanted to overcome or challenge directly the top institutions, the traditional institutions of power, the centers of the established centers of power. But it happened that way almost unwittingly, because his policies became so popular at that time.
Yeah,
now,
but he got carried away. Maybe at one point he was so powerful, he had this absolute majority in the House, that he decided he could do anything. Because if you were talking to him at one point and you say, you cannot do this because it's going to go against the bureaucracy, goes against the tradition, he would tell you that we will change the law. We have to vote. That's what he believed in. At that point, and there was no return from, that is, he jumped over the cliff. And I think that decided his future, meaning that he went from there, on the way down. I'm sure you have you met him at some occasions, and you noticed that he was really, really riding very high, and he wasn't listening to anyone. But then the liberal label helped him a lot. It was his success. And then he took that and he ran with it. And he jumped into this very serious, deep cliff. He jumped over the cliff, and then now the rest is history.
If we think, You're right. I think that back then, especially after the re-election in February 2005, his ego and hubris, I think, got the better of him. He became overconfident. And remember, he also said that, they could be in power for 20 years, right? They could keep winning elections.
Right.
But in terms of being the political orientation, I think if you look at Move Forward Party, they're kind of a progressive liberal party because of the values about rights, freedoms, the gender equality, egalitarianism, fair play. I mean, the kind of values that they bring would make them kind of a progressive liberal party. Now, back then, Thai Rak Thai Palang Prachachon, Thai Rak Thai, it didn't start out that way. It was a policies to reallocate income, prosperity, and to give the grassroots a better shake, a better opportunities, upward mobility, and so on. But I don't think it started out as a kind of a liberal progressive mantra to say, hey, we want to be a liberal order. It was just kind of like kind of winning the votes and being popular with the grassroots through these policies and spreading their wealth a bit, spreading opportunities. They did that, but I think that as a result, they became so popular. But I think that in the end, Kun Suthichaiครับ, bottom line is that I don't think that Thaksin at that time wanted to kind of radically modernize the system. I think that the modernization that we're seeing, this is the agenda of the move forward. So the irony is that Thaksin was actually an establishment figure. Put it this way, I think he wanted to be someone like General Prem, who was a Privy Council chairman, but he was actually alienated and ostracized from that core inner sanctum, and we have had the conflict ever since.
But the red shirt movement gave him that lift, gave him the confidence that he now has the mass. The mass is with him. The red shirt movement added to his hubris and said, wow, look at this. The whole country, at one point he said the whole country would turn red, right? And he was very confident that he could win any election from then on.
Yes, red all over the land. Dangทั่วแผ่นดิน. Yeah. And I mean, all those years, I still think, Kun Suthichai, that the situation today would move forward with this probable dissolution, with its structural reform agenda, and the deal that we saw on August 22nd and so on. It has really moved the dial now forward. So I think that we have different sets of questions that we need to address, different challenges. The Thaksin at that time, the irony is that his enemies, adversaries at that time now have flipped him, have turned him to be, from foe to ally to friend, in order to keep down the move forward movement.
Okay, now what's going to happen to Kun Sethai as Prime Minister? Because if Kun Thaksin becomes so vocal, so public, the role of the Prime Minister would be in trouble. People already asking how many Prime Ministers do we have? And Kun Sethai every day has to insist that I am in charge, I'm in control. So how is this power play going to play out?
There are two ways to try to answer that. One is that we can use a benchmark from the past. In 2008, we had a prime minister named Samak Suntarawait, and then followed briefly by Kun Somchai Wongsawat, Kun Thaksin's brother-in-law. When Kun Samak was prime minister, there was an uneasy relationship between them. You remember, Kun Thaksin came back to Thailand after he was ousted in the coup. He came back briefly. I think at the end of February 2008, and then he left in like about June, and he didn't come back again 2008. But the Samak administration and Kun Samak himself thought that he could be the bridge between the old conservatives and the Thaksin side, because he thought he had the credentials with the establishment. But in the end, it was an uneasy relationship because Kun Samak was not, he's a veteran politician. He He had clout, he had experience. He was not going to bow down and become a Thaksin puppet. So uneasy relationship. And then Somchai walks what? The other way. Kun Somchai, I think, was beholden to Thaksin completely. And then Yingluck was, Thaksin think and Yingluck act, or Thaksin thought Yingluck acted. It was two sides of the same coin. So Thaksin had a lot of power over Yingluck. So for Sethar, this is one way we can think about it. I mean, he's certainly a proxy. He's certainly one of the representatives of the party as prime minister. But if Kun Thaksin is back, I mean, with Samak, Thaksin was away for some time, but when he's in town, same town, it'll be difficult to manage this relationship. So one way of answering is that we can probably conclude that Kun Thaksin will want to take the front seat, the driver's seat, without being seen in the seat as much as possible.
How do you do that? How do you manage that?
Well, we're seeing that today. We're seeing that tomorrow.
I know.
He'll make these movements around, and Kun Sethar will have to keep saying that, I'm still prime minister according to the law, to the constitution. So that's one answer. The other answer is looking at Sethar himself. I think that he has been working hard. I think he's got good intentions. This is why I mentioned from the beginning that, we have to keep in mind some perspective from Suthichai. Don't forget, we had 9 years of General Prayut, 5 years of military government, 4 years, another 4 years of General Prayut. We don't want that anymore, right? So we have to keep perspective. This is an elected civilian government. Second best, first best should have been Pita as prime minister.
Yeah.
Move forward, Pheu should be the government. But of course, we know what's happened. So Pheu led Sethar PM. Sethar has been working hard, trying to sell Thailand, bringing in investments and so on. He's trying to create income and so on. But what he needs to do is tackle structural challenges, structural reforms. Not doing that yet, not making any effective outcomes. But we should give him some chance. And then the Sethar-Thaksin relationship is going to be very tricky. It will depend on Sethar whether he can manage this. Kun Thaksin, we know. He'll be moving, he'll be maneuvering, the Thaksin we know. But Sethar, we don't know as much. How he can navigate, how he can put up and manage this relationship. But remember also, in the Shinawat constellation of power, it's not just Thaksin anymore. There's also his wife, his daughter now, new power holder, and there's a Sethar. It's also the sister, Kun Yingluck from outside. Also, they have a say. So maybe within that constellation, we will see some management of the premiership.
Well, reporters covering the government house have been saying that Kun Yingluck, even though she's abroad, is also quite influential in one of the power channels, meaning that you have Kun Thaksin giving orders, you have Kun Paetongtarn at the party, you have Kun Thaksin's wife or former wife dictating things from her own base, and then Kun Yingluck also is supervising things from her own fortress. So, this gets more complicated when somewhere in the middle sits Kun Sethar, who has to listen to all these noises and all this behind-the-scenes maneuvering. How can he be effective if he is confined to that position?
Well, this is not new, right? In 2008, when Kun Somchai was prime minister, you had Thaksin from outside in exile, exerting influence. Remember and in 2009, 2010, the Red Shirt protest, Kun Thaksin also beam in and video conference and so on. So the Thaksin clan in charge with different personality, different faces, I think is not new. And I think this kind of there's an intrigue, there's a kind of a obsession and fixation with this side. But why don't the reporters question the election commission, the constitutional court? What are they doing? Why is the largest winning party going to be dissolved? I mean, the attention, this kind of fixation with Thaksin, I think 20 years ago it would make sense. 15 years ago. But today there are other questions to ask.
Okay, so if you forget about Thaksin, look at the future, the next election. If Kun Sethar can survive until the next election, or somewhere in between, Kun Thaksin may decide that, okay, enough for Sethar, now Paetongtarn is ready to become prime minister. How does that scenario play out to you?
Okay, I think it's a very important question. I think the Kun Sethar, I don't know his longevity, but he has to contend with all these other power holders within the ruling party and so on. But the Pheu Thai-led coalition government conceivably could last a full term. So when it comes to the next election, and we all think that is amazing, and ridiculous that we all kind of see the move forward dissolution as a foregone conclusion that will happen for sure. So they'll have to come up with a third party. Somehow, if the next election, we see this trend from Future Forward to Move Forward gaining more ground from 81 MPs to 151 MPs, if they get up to over 200 MPs, even 250 majority, then the onus will really be with Pheu Thai and the established centers of power. Because if Move Forward in the third banner, under the third banner, gains more ground, more votes, this means that Thai people want their agenda of change and reform. Now, the issue for Pheu Thai will then be, do they want to be a force for change, or do they want to be a force of reaction and conservatism? And another irony that could happen is that a party that used to be 25 years ago looked like a progressive party could end up being a very conservative party just to maintain power. So we were not there yet, but if the electoral pattern, if the election results go in the same direction, same way at the next elections, then I think the onus will be on Pheu Thai, on the Thaksin side. What side of history do they want to be on?
If you ask me, Thaksin's main strategy would not be whether I want to be seen as a conservative or liberal party. All I want is to win the next election. I want to be number one, whatever that means, and whatever price I have to pay. That is the mission, and I think you will see that happening soon.
I think the tide of history is progressing, is moving. The ground is shifting. 25 years ago, winning election means paying attention to grassroots, provide some upward mobility, give poor people a chance, look at the urban-rural divide, income inequality, universal healthcare, 30 baht, one thumb, one product, cluster development projects. 25 years ago, those were the winning. Those comprise the winning platform.
The Banjai phenomenon, don't forget. The dynasties, the local dynasties.
Yeah, you look at the local dynasties, the Banjai effect this time from Suthichai. I think that a lot of people think that vote buying is not as effective as they used to be. And that how come this party with not a lot of money won the largest number of votes move forward. So I think the electoral landscape is changing. I think money will still be involved, but it will be less consequential. Now, moving forward, the agenda has shifted. The ground is shifting because what people want to hear, they want to see is structural change and reform. No longer just the populism. So 10,000 baht digital wallet 20 years ago, 15 years ago would have been effective. This time, yeah, of course, people will want that, but it's not the decider. It's not decisive. Decisive would be structural reforms, tackling monopolies, decentralization, getting military out of politics, out of business, and modernizing Thailand's established centers of power and moving Thailand forward into the 21st century so that it can regain its place in the international pecking order, moving up the value chain so that we can kind of have a future, grow the pie. So I think that's what people want to see. The agenda used to be successful 25 years ago has changed. Today, the agenda is about structural reforms.
So you see a real battle line drawn between the conservative force and the progressive force in the next election? That clear? Is it that clear?
I think it's always been like that over the last 25 years. I mean, this, Thai Rak Thai, Palang Prachachon, the Thaksin aligned parties, Pheu Thai, they kind of won all these elections by trying to introduce progressive policies via through income redistribution, grassroots focus, and universal healthcare. This so-called populism, right? But today, populism is not the winning ticket anymore. It's structural reforms. So today, the progressive would have to back the structural reforms and modernization of Thailand. If you still stick with the populism, you're not going to win the next election.
Would that be a two-party competition, Pheu Thai and whatever the new name of the Move Forward Party is? Parties like Suthichai Thai, Rwam Thai Sang Chat, Palang Pracharat, will they have gone away by then?
I think we'll still have those, smaller parties, Chat Thai Patana, or I think Suthichai Thai will still be around. But the question will be, will Pheu Thai move in that direction? And then you just basically have the one kind of conservative side vis-a-vis the move forward or a successor on the progressive side. In fact, if you want to have a winning party and win seats, this is a great time to form a party and basically copy and poach some of the structural policies from Move Forward. I mean, Move Forward is the only party espousing these policies, but there's room for more parties with reform and change as the agenda.
I agree. In fact, I was thinking along that line that there could be several new parties, following Move Forward party's line, more independent, smaller parties perhaps, but with, single issue platform, the environment, equality, climate change, whatever, and then, working together to form, a political force. They don't have to be under the same party, right?
It makes sense because of the demographics, right? So if you think about how the world is changing, or the supply chain resilience, the U.S.-China conflict, geoeconomic war, all these geopolitical tensions, confrontation, and so on. The need for growth, development, innovation. I think that when you have older people fading away and more younger people entering the electorate, voting age, younger people, they will go for this new agenda. So there's definitely, just by the demographics alone, there will be space, there will be room for new parties based on these policy ideas, the new policy ideas of, climate, sustainability, decentralization, reform, change.
Good governance.
Good governance, absolutely.
Good. So we will, follow Kun Thaksin's move very closely, but, not fixated with him. Trying to look ahead, moving forward, we will see new faces, new ideas, and we still have to have hope, right? We can just say, that's, that this is Thailand, what do you expect? You don't want us to continue saying that with our friends from other countries to say, hey, what's happening in Thailand? Always the excuse is, this is Thailand. You have to understand us. It's not going to work anymore.
I mean, the kind of the exceptional Thailand. I think it's many people outside becoming kind of tired of it and a bit jaded. How many times can you rationalize and cop out on the Thai way, right? Thai way with a coup, another coup. And then another judicial intervention, dissolution, another dissolution of the party. So after a while, they caught on. Yeah. They caught on and they're calling it out. So they see what's happening here. It's becoming, you cannot have in a country, how many times would a country have to dissolve winning parties and have military coups before it's called out for being undemocratic and autocratic? So I think people outside are seeing that.
We have to put an end to that. Thank you very much, Ajahn Titinan. Very informative and provocative discussion. Thank you. Hope to
Thank you ค
talk
รับ
to you
สุทธิ
again.
ชัย
สวัสดีครับอาจาร
ส
ย์
วัสดีครับสวัสดีครับ Thank you
ติดตามสุทธิชัยไลฟ์กับผมทุกวันเช้าสายบ่ายเย็นมีเรื่องร้อนเรื่องวิเคราะห์เรื่องสัมภาษณ์เรื่อง Exclusive ต้องที่นี่ที่เดียวครับไปติดตามผมใน Facebook 2 เพจสุทธิชัยยุ่นกับสุทธิชัยไลฟ์และอย่าลืม YouTube ครับ YouTube ไปกด Subscribe ที่สุทธิชัยไลฟ์กด Subscribe แล้วกดกระดิ่งเตือนคุณทันทีที่สุทธิชัยไลฟ์มาในมือถือคุณ นอกนั้น Twitter ไปกดติดตามและ TikTok ครับ TikTok ล่าสุดนั้นสามารถที่จะถ่ายทอดสดสุทธิชัยไลฟ์ให้ทุกท่านติดตามได้เช่นกันสุทธิชัยไลฟ์ anywhere anytime สุทธิชัยไลฟ์คือเพื่อนที่เล่าข่าววิเคราะห์ข่าวสามารถทำให้ท่านทันข่าวทุกวินาทีจากนี้ไปครับ